Okay, we are ready.
Welcome, everybody, to the February 9th, 2021 Parks and Recreation Board meeting. Staying warm. Cassie, do we have any members of the public in the chat room?
No, we do not.
Need to read the public script.
I will. I'm going to share the screen. So listed on the agenda is the web address to join the meeting today. The instructions are listed. For public comment, when called upon, please raise your hand virtually by computer. You can click on the participants button. At the bottom hand, there is a designated raise hand. If you're calling in by phone, *9 to raise and lower your hand and *6 to unmute.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Ross is not. So Cassie, do you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Dale Harris.
Present.
Ross. Wendy.
Here.
John O'Connor. Sonia.
Here.
Danny.
Here.
Margie.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Cassie. So the first agenda item is the approval of the minutes from our January 12th, 2021 meeting. It'd be great to get a motion on the floor to approve the minutes, please.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 12th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Wendy.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the members of the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any more ayes? Wendy, do you vote?
Yeah, I said aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yep, we got you now.
Any announcements from the board or staff members?
I don't have any announcements for the board today that I won't be covering in my update towards the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Any other comments from the staff or board? Any comments from the public? Members of the public? Now we'll move to action items. The first action item is Mount Dean Stone Management Plan. Morgan, you're up.
Sounds great. As you guys know, we've been working on a management plan for Mount Dean Stone for about a year now. A lot of this work has taken place within the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee. I've come in and provided some updates on where we were at with that plan last spring. We've been kind of steadily plugging along. At this point, the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee feels that they have a final draft that would be ready for a public comment period. And so today, the item that I'm bringing forward is the final draft of our Mount Dean Stone management plan and seeking approval from this board to allow city staff to set a public comment period of 2 weeks. The reason we've settled on 2 weeks, we typically do a 20-day public comment period, but unfortunately February is kind of a short month and we want to make sure that we have time to incorporate comments and bring forward hopefully a final draft for adoption in March. In general, this plan really, and I'll start screen sharing here in a moment and give you a little bit of a quick background. I'm not going to take too much time going through it, but in general, we've gotten significant public comment in the development of this plan, and a lot of our recommendations and some of the vetting of those recommendations also occurred prior to city acquisition of the 360 360 acres of Mount Dean Stone, which connects to the South Hill Spur. And so we feel that a 2-week public comment period is going to be more than sufficient to share the document and get good input. So again, at this point, we do still have a draft document. We certainly are welcome to suggested edits or changes. Obviously, big changes are something that if we have major changes, we should really reconsider posting it for a public comment period. Minor changes and edits and whatnot are to be expected, and we do have until for another month before we need to finalize those. So I will quickly screen share and give you an update of quick walk through of the plan and what to expect. So really quickly, and to remind you, the Mount Dean Stone parcel that the city just acquired, which was all before that we've been calling Mount Dean Stone North because it's part of a larger Five Valleys Land Trust project, is about 360 acres. And this actually connects to 175 acres of South Hill Spur, what we called the South Hill Spur property that the city already owned and passed and adopted a management plan for back in 2017. What we're attempting to do here, there's actually, when this plan is adopted, it will be an entire plan for the entire 553 acres, 535 acres. So that's the South Hill Spur and the Dean Stone North property. And so what we've got here is in the intro, basically describing what has been done in the past and recognizing that what I've got in front of you is part 1, which is going to focus on this 360 acres. There's going to be some updates to the 2017 South Hill Spur plan, but then the South Hill Spur plan in its entirety will be part 2 of this document. And it's not shown here today, but we do have some recommended changes to that plan, but they're pretty minor, and it's more just to update and merge these 2 properties. So to get right down to it, again, we want to manage it as one contiguous property. To give you an idea of the layout of this property, you can see this lower parcel, this is our figure 1 orientation map to give people a lay of the land. There's 2 primary access points, Barmeyer Trailhead, Sousa Trailhead. All of this lower area is the 175 acres South Hill Spur open space, which we have an adopted management plan for in 2017. The 360 acres that the city just acquired starts here at what we're calling the Woodsy property. These are all names that we're not recommending be adopted. We just needed to provide names so that we can refer to them in the document. So our working name for this property has been the Woodsy property. It's a large, wide open area. The Stone Mountain Access Road, this blue line right here is an actual road that was used to sell home sites. This was all slated for development. Comes up onto the property. The corridor property is this long, skinny chain of properties that was used basically to provide the trail to get up to the top 150 acres, which we're calling the saddle property. And so the saddle property completely encompasses the peak of Mount Dean Stone, which is right here, which there's a small 5-acre chunk right at the top, which is where you see the radio towers from town. If you recall, Park Board approved the city entering into an agreement with Five Valleys Land Trust to build trails on this property before the city took acquisition of it. So this blue line from here all the way up, we're calling the High, Wide, and Handsome Trail, goes around the top. Again, this is not a name that we're recommending adopting long-term. This was the working name that was used for the trail when Five Valleys was building it. This trail has been fully constructed and is already on the ground. These trails down here have already been constructed as part of the South Hill Spur. This is the Barmeyer Loop, which is a multi-use public non-motorized trail that connects the Barmeyer to the Sousa Trailhead with a pedestrian-only spur that comes off here. This Arnica Drive access point is one that was also in the South Hill Spur plan that has not been built and would require some work with adjacent landowners to make it happen. It's still shown here, but it's not one that has been built or it will be built anytime soon. So the only real trail development, and I'll talk a bit more about this in the plan, are these yellow lines that you see to make these final connections. And this was really where we married the South Hills Spur recreation plan from 2017 with this new updated plan, because we had to change some of the routes now that we actually, that were adopted. And we didn't officially adopt specific routes in the South Hills Spur plan, but we recognize that there would be ways that we'd want to connect in the future the South Hills Spur to this Deanstone North property. To give you a snapshot of the larger planning area, this is figure 2, and we just reference it in a lot of the intro. This shows generally the layout of these lands in relation to other lands. This is the South Hill Spur, which as part of this plan, we're recommending that name go away and we no longer refer to 2 individual parcels. It's just one parcel name. The larger Deanstone North property, the 360 acres. All of this properties on the backside, there's these light blue areas are state land. So either side of up top of Deanstone is state land. And then this whole area on the backside is all Nature Conservancy property, about 2,000 acres, that little over 2,000 acres that Five Valleys Land Trust does have an option to buy. Those properties do provide that connection over to the Greater Paddy Canyon Recreation Area. This House of Sky Trail is one that Five Valleys and the Nature Conservancy have been working on and have funding for and will start building this year. And so that trail is going to provide a connection to from city property over to upper Deer Creek parking area. This is a seasonal Deer Creek Road. This is a seasonal road that's closed all winter, but the Forest Service opens in the spring and summer. I know that they are having discussions with extending this spur down into some of the Sam Braxton trail system. And so we do have trail development that is occurring both to the south and to the east that's going to connect this parcel to a larger landscape. And again, this is the map that Five Valleys has kind of used to, use to sell their project and for public scoping. There are 2 trailheads over here on Nature Conservancy land up at the end of Miller Creek Road, the Inez trailhead and the Little Park Creek trailhead as well. I think it is worth noting, just while I got you here, you can see most of the trails back here are old logging roads. This was all Plum Creek timberlands. It was pretty heavily logged and pretty heavily roaded up as well. Currently, the only access that connects these true trailheads up to the top of Deanstone is this road right here, which does not provide dedicated public access. It actually goes onto private property. And so until this trail is built or another trail route is built over here, there's really no connection, legal connection between these trailheads and the upper portions of Deanstone.
Fish, Wildlife, and Parks make any recommendations regarding dog closures?
Yes, they have. Yeah, they've been very involved in this process from the beginning, and we do have, as part of this plan, a recommended seasonal dog closure on a portion of this property.
That was discussed at CLAC.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Section 1 is naming, again, talking a bit about place names and then working names that we use throughout the document. The only thing that we are recommending, the only actual dedicated name that we are recommending as part of the plan is to call this entire parcel, the entire 335 acres, Mount Deanstone Preserve. We are certainly open to other recommendations. One of the discussions we had quite a bit at CLAC was how to differentiate this parcel, Mount Deanstone Preserve, that's city owned, from Mount Deanstone, which is a federally recognized mountain with a peak, from Mount Deanstone Project, which is the Five Valleys greater project that wraps all the way down to Miller Creek. And so we settled on Mount Deanstone Preserve because this board saw fit to adopt this area as a park preserve, which is one of our it was similar, which really sets similar management goals to what we have on Sentinel, South Hill, or Sentinel, Jumbo, North Hills, Tower Street Conservation Area, etc. Trailheads and access points. We won't have any new access points. No names are changing. Again, this is just kind of setting up our place names. When we talk about trails and recreational use, again, and I'm just going to flip to the main map. Overall, I don't have a concrete number. I probably should have done the back of the napkin math, but we're looking at bringing on with this parcel, I think right around 6.5 miles of new trails, some of which are existing road networks. In general, what we're planning, 4.3 miles were built last year. Here, I'm gonna just scan through some of this. Oh, I thought I had a map pretty close. I'll go back. This 4.3 mile trail route is the high, wide, and handsome route that gets you all the way to the top and around the top of Mount Dean Stone. We are also, as ways to connect this parcel with the South Hill Spur, recommending an additional 1.6 mile construction of this final little trail leg to connect the top of the developer road to the high, wide, and handsome trail, a public non-motorized single track, which we've been affectionately calling the Duckhead Trail, that would bring people around to where the Sousa Trail crosses the road. And then, you know, when we did the public scoping on the South Hill Spur, we did hear a lot of support and have heard support in the field for this ped-only option on the Barmeyer Loop. And we did have a little ped-only trail spec that would bring people up to this point in the South Hill Spur Trail. With this trail in place, we've placed the ped-only trail on the far side of the property. In doing this and in vetting these, it's worth noting that we also have Clancy Gendreau and our office has done 2 to 3 years worth of inventory work, including winter monitoring of elk, winter range, mapping bear dens, mapping springs, mapping wildlife snags. And we feel that trail development in this gully is not going to adversely impact any of those resources, but we do have that documented in another draft and then in our discussions. So with the adoption of this plan, the only new trails we would have at this point, again, would be these yellow lines that you see on the map. Going back and those trail, how those trails, the specifications of those trails will be built by, 1.404 miles of single track will be that Duckhead Trail, will be to the specifications that we developed with Five Valleys Land Trust and the Parks Board for the High, Wide, and Handsome Trail. Those are in Appendix 1 at the bottom of this document. Really great work there. It's something that I basically am going to be adopting for every multi-use non-motorized trail that we build. It really has kind of developed best management practices for building trails. The pedestrian-only trail will meet the specifications that were outlined in the South Hill Spur Management Plan and our Conservation Lands Management Plan. And in general, that includes up to a 15% grade on average, 18 to 24 inch tread width, and switchbacks with generally a tighter radius. And where we've done this on the South Hill Spur, it's worked really well to, even though those trails are signed, it's not a fun trail to ride. And so it does a great job of differentiating use and keeping users separated. As far as domestic dog restrictions, we are recommending that the property, just like we did for the South Hill Spur, is open to dogs on voice restraint as per our current ordinance. But we've also recognized that the upper portion of the property is pretty critical elk winter range. This discussion about what to do as we develop recreation in that area has been going on with a larger group, this Mount Deanstone Resource Committee, for the past 3 to 4 years, which has, probably 30 to 40 folks from all different backgrounds. And some of the work that committee did really helped CLAC and the city and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks come up with a good recommendation. And so what we are recommending as part of the plan is not a full winter closure on this property, but we are recommending the trails leading up into what Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has said is critical winter range for mule deer and elk, as being closed to dogs from December 1st to May 1st. So these red lines, we would have closures go into effect on the lower portion of the property at the South Hill Spur. And these areas would remain open to the public, but closed to all dogs for almost, I guess that'd be about half the year. And this is a recommendation after much discussion that Fish, Wildlife, and Parks did really support. I think it is also worth noting, even on a year like this year, where we're having a pretty mild winter use on the top of this property, we're anticipating not being really heavy. This is a really pretty north-facing shaded slope. It is a tough place to get to. If you're starting at the Sousa trailhead down here, to get all the way up into this location of this saddle property, you've already done 4 miles of hiking in winter, or skinning on skis in winter uphill.
Does it plan to take into account any kind of monitoring for winter use?
Yes, we do. And, I think we did add a caveat here that if compliance with, right here, if compliance with, well, I can't highlight well on a PDF, but if compliance with the seasonal dog closures for and recreational impacts exceed tolerable limits, closure of this area to all winter recreation should be considered. This is a similar, so we're not closing the door to our ability to make decisions later.
Great.
Public hunting, this is a topic that we discussed quite a bit. Any open space land within the city limits has to have, it has a firearm exemption on it. You're not allowed to shoot firearms. This includes archeries or bow and arrow, unless you have an adoptive hunting management plan with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And so that's how our current city ordinance is written. We do allow, the only property that we allow hunting on right now is the larger Clark Fork Islands property. So that's the old Tower Street Conservation Area, plus the additional acreage that we added and adopted a management plan for earlier this year. That is an archery season. It's worth noting that a lot of the drive to preserve these lands in Miller Creek the reasons that TNC really purchased those and decided to hold off on selling them off for low levels of development was to protect public hunting. There's a long history of hunting in that area. This plan is recommending allowing hunting and a hunting season to be described in a hunting management plan that we would develop after adoption of this plan with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And we're recommending that be allowed on just the upper 158 acres that is contiguous with areas that already allow hunting, like this state land, and all this nature conservancy land that it abuts. And so those meetings that we would have and that would go through city legal review for that hunting season would really talk about, or the hunting management plan would talk about season, species, allowable methods of take, that kind of stuff. Adoption of this plan just allows us to move forward with development of a hunting management plan on that upper 239 acres. And of course, as with all city parks and open space, no trapping of animals by the public is permitted at all. Finally, and we're cruising right through this, it's really important on this plan. Also, it's kind of the less sexy part of these plans is to talk about what kind of fences and signs you're going to put up. But as you all know, that is critical infrastructure for managing the public. And it is really worth having these systems in place when we open this area up to the public. And so Section 4 really focuses on our trail and trailhead infrastructure. It includes our fixed fencing and gates. It includes our sign packages. where we will have signs, where we will build fences, and then also our restoration of our old logging roads. And just to keep it moving, I'll just briefly jump to the map and show you what's being recommended. One thing worth noting, this corridor property was built around the ability to get a trail to the top of the mountain. There's private property on either side. And so opportunities for trespass do exist, and it's something we want to minimize. In general, this fence line on and adjacent to the Line Family Ranch, the Line family did do a land swap with Five Valleys Land Trust to get this parcel into city ownership to allow for the trail. They will be putting a wildlife-friendly barbed wire fence because they're an active cattle operation. We do have fences here that are certainly not wildlife-friendly that we are recommending removing and actually just not putting back up unless we start to see issues with trespass. We do have the little pink icons are gates. We've got gates at key locations where we have roads coming onto our system or where we want to limit any further vehicular access from folks coming up. This developer road does have an easement for the Line family to come up. Part of the deal in the land swap was they have the ability to draw water out of a well here on city property to fill stock tanks on their property for water. And so they do have use of this road to get to this point. All these little Y signs are where we'll have directional signage. The exclamation point signs, these are the closure signage for our dog closure, our seasonal dog closures. Our no signs are where we have a change of use. So this would be like a no bike sign. We do have a significant amount of locations where the trail will cross road systems that the public is not allowed to use. We have administrative access, but where there's no public access. So one is here at Larch Camp Road. So we'll have a sign package that's basically saying end of public road access, stay on the trail. Another one at Beanstone Cutoff. The trail actually crosses that road twice. And then also some false gates up on the landscape to really just keep people from using existing road systems and going back on to areas that we don't want them to go on. All the red lines you see in this map are old logging roads. And actually all the white lines you see here are old logging roads too. Like I said, this area was intensively roaded. These red lines are ones where we will go in and actively do slash prescriptions. We won't do a full rehabilitation or recontouring, but we will close the roads down to a point where you're not able to comfortably walk on them to really assist natural revegetation and restoration of the site. Another thing worth noting, as the trail crosses on to the saddle property, we have recognized some high resource value and high potential for public trespass onto adjacent property. So we are recommending building a couple jackleg fences here. And just to keep people within this trail corridor, we do have an elk wallow in one of these locations. We also, some of the real important areas for the elk in the winter are actually on this state land over here. And so we're going to actively try to keep people on the trail and discourage off-trail traffic in this area. So we'll have a little higher infrastructure presence up here as the trail crosses onto the saddle property.
Hey, before you,
Last thing, and then I'm done with this map. As future trail connections come in, the high, wide, and handsome, and the a potential loop trail coming in from those lower properties, if one gets built, we have kept in place the ability to put closure signage for the dogs and for informational signage in this location as well.
hey, Morgan, before you leave this map,
Yes.
what's the parcel circled in red above the Larch Camp Road notation?
I believe that is just a piece of state of Montana land. I think it's school trust land that is kind of landlocked by private property on all sides.
So it's not of interest to us.
No, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of this property is, and we didn't show the property lines because it would just get too confusing, but these is just, I mean, there's dozens of individual small private properties in here. And so the ability to connect these two would take a lot of work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Morgan, this is Ross. I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is there an existing history of use with like four-wheelers in this area? They kind of start from the Miller Creek side, and is that going to be a problem?
You-
Are they already using this area or four-wheelers or other motorized vehicles?
Not really. There was a fair amount. If we go back to the larger map, this Little Park Creek access actually has had kind of a fair amount of that type of use. And there's been a little bit up it here at Skyline Ridge Trailhead. But over the last several years, the Nature Conservancy has done a significant amount of work to close these road systems down, and that has pretty much stopped that use. It's very little of that, and the majority of that never really reached this location up here. It's worth noting that the 150 acres or 200, I can't remember exactly how much is up here, but this parcel right here that the city acquired was all in private land hands before, so it was not open to the public. It's still not open to the public. It'll be open to the public next summer.
Gotcha. Thanks.
So that in essence is the plan. I think the last couple paragraphs really talk about the importance of those wayfinding signs and educational signage. I think obviously when we have a closure and really informing recreationists on how to act on certain areas where they will be approaching zones that we've found to have some conservation importance, or certainly when we have closures, making sure that we're recognizing the need for a really good sign package that includes education on why we make our decisions. And then again, I think those trail specs, this would be part 2, where we just basically cut and paste in the adopted 2017 South Hill Spur rec plan. And then appendix 1 are trail standards that we've been building our multi-use public non-motorized trails by on the property. So that is it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to take any other questions.
Thank you, Morgan. Very good presentation. Any board questions for Morgan? Any members of the public have any questions? Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that the Parks and Rec Board set a 2-week public comment period to solicit additional public comment of the Mount Deanstone Preserve Recreation and Special Resource Management Plan.
Is there a second?
This is Wendy. I second.
Any other discussion? Any other questions for Morgan? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you very much, Morgan.
Thanks, everybody. We'll keep you posted on the progress.
Thanks,
Thank
Morgan.
you.
It's super exciting to see this coming along.
It'll be
Thank you,
fun.
Morgan.
Great work.
Mhm.
The next item on the agenda is the Fort Missoula Regional Park Turf Working Group. And Spencer's going to take the lead on that.
And Spencer got called out of town, so I'm going to just pitch hit here with a little bit of Donna's help.
Thank you, Shirley.
So this referral's asking the park board to update the process from last month by approving the field advisory working group meets the criteria, and the process outlined identifies the unique role of this working group, essentially. So that's what we're here today to do.
To fill in, so what our staff did is using the criteria that is presented to you in the packet, have identified members of the community, particularly from what we have been referring to as our Uber user groups, and are again seeking your support of this process. The criteria, their unique role, and so essentially this is a citizens task force, if you will, or a working group who will develop a menu or a series of recommendations as it relates to management of Fort Missoula and other heavily used sports turf in the valley, thereby trying to give both the park board and the staff who manage these sites a set of tools to consider. Hopefully a knowledgeable citizens working group who can really devote some time to this. We have hired Virginia Tribe as the facilitator. And so it is not a subcommittee of the park board. It is a working group that you are giving an assignment to, and then you will look at their recommendations. And the reason we wanted to make that distinction is we think it's really important for the citizens working group to be able to operate in an environment that allows for the greatest amount of interaction and discussion, to be able to ask for whatever data and statistics and information that they can. We'll be bringing forward all kinds of information. And we felt that that environment, while those meetings will be public, and Ginny has done this for us in the past with the development of the Conservation Lands Management Plan, for example, the public still can speak, but the working group gets to have interactions that do not require Robert Rules of Order and us archiving everything that they said. This is an opportunity for them to brainstorm. And so I wanted to make sure that the park board understood that distinction and that you're still very supportive of the efforts of this working group and the criteria that the staff have used to identify key members in our community to help us.
So Sonia and myself will not serve on this group?
That is correct. By having any of our board members serve on it, it by default you become involved in what could be potential decision-making in the future. And so we are separating the decision-making. So we bring you all of the recommendations at once. So you can look at them in totality and make good decisions with staff recommendations based on the working group's efforts. And we are also, like I said, hiring professional consultants to help them, not only Virginia Tribe, but we'll also be working with Larry Musser from Prescriptive Root Zone.
And John O'Connor can participate as a member of the Ultimate community?
I don't even know if he's on, Shirley. I have not yet seen the names, but yes, if he is participating, it would solely be as a member of Ultimate.
So the gal that that applied from Ultimate said that she may have a substitute. So that may be what they were thinking. I don't know.
So right now, John is not serving.
Right.
Is that it for your presentation? Any questions for Shirley or Donna? Hearing none, it'd be great to get a motion on the floor.
Well, I move that we approve the Fort Missoula Park Turf. Am I getting this right? Fort Missoula Regional Park Turf Working Group criteria, unique role and process for completing their work.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there a second?
I second.
Second. Oh.
Any other discussion? Any other questions for Shirley or Donna? Any members of the public have any comments? Ready for the vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is approved enterprise request for ropes course annual inspection. Surely that's you.
Right. So so each year we undertake a professional inspection of the ropes course. And this year we're asking for the inspection cost of $1,725 from the ropes course enterprise fund to be used for that expenditure. We also would like to again ask that $9,000 be approved for replacement of the belay cables in case they don't pass inspection. they've passed the last few years, but they keep telling us every year that they're on their last leg. So
Is this an annual event?
annual inspection, correct.
Any questions?
Shirley,
for
how
Shir-
much is, oh, Shirley, how much money is in that fund right now?
We have, in the ropes course fund is $6,907. And then in the youth enterprise fund, there's $15,438. So if the belay cables fail, we will use part of the youth program ENT, since most of the people we run on the ropes course are youth, to make up the difference.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Shirley? We ready for a motion? Be great to get a motion on the floor.
I move that we approve the use of ropes course enterprise funds for the annual inspection of $1,725. Should I read the whole thing?
Please.
In the event that the belay cables do not pass inspection approval, an additional $9,000 can be used for replacement cables.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Margie. Any further discussion for Shirley? Any comments from the member of the public? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Daniel, did you vote?
Yeah, yep, and I made the original motion.
Gotcha. Any opposition? All those, the motion passes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Shirley.
The next item is the approval of the trees for Missoula Shade Shelter. Is David on the? David, you're up. Welcome, David. Good to see you. Your mute's on.
Pardon?
Your mute
Oh.
was on.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. I have Karen Sippy here with us today for questions.
Karen.
This is a proposal in your packet. You have a drawing of Shade Shelter 4 concept. This is provides for 5 arched structures that will serve as a single shade structure. They will have like a cloud-like feature over the top of them. This is going to be located somewhere between Mary Street and Agnes. I think the preferred one is right at Agnes. This is a wonderful, whimsical looking option here. It could be quite substantial when it's completed, but it looks really like a cool idea. We're supportive of it and would like to seek your approval of that. So I'll yield the floor to Karen.
If there are any questions, I'm just really excited to be working with this group of sculpture students. And even since you've gotten your packet, they've made some adjustments according to David's suggestions and our engineer Maria Chestnut's suggestions and architect suggestions. So it's really exciting. We're hoping to get it to the engineer after tomorrow's class so we can get working on it and get it in. We've got a short semester this year. So we've got to get in by the end of April, but we're really, really excited about it.
Thank you, Karen. What is the roofing material?
The roofing material is going to be some sort of thin sheet metal that can be rolled over the top. Maria suggested maybe a galvanized steel, but something thin that can follow a nice soft shape.
Contour. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the location, Karen? It seems like it's going out on the Bitterroot Trail where there's not really any shade for several blocks. Is that right?
No, Ross, this place actually, the views are fabulous. And that's why the students came up with this design. They really wanted to mimic the mountains. You see the views from Snowbowl to the Bitterroot. But it's just, and then Bob Ward's is right there. So it's Southgate Mall parking lot and Bob Ward's. And there is not a single tree. As a matter of fact, we've got Marie and Amy Sillenberg and I have a grant out that we're hoping to get to tree a section of that trail just north of this. But this has absolutely zero shade, nothing. So this will just be a really cool impact on the trail.
Cool. And I'm glad to hear you said it is going to be structural engineered. There will be some.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So Maria Chestnut from Morrison Merrily, she has actually done the engineering on Shade Shelter 2 and 3. So she's doing this one for us pro bono. We're very fortunate, as well as Don MacArthur and Chris Haskell, architects at MMW, are working in. Both Chris and Maria have come into class twice or 3 times so far to consult on designs and answer questions. So it's been really great fun.
Hey, Karen or Dave, who's paying for all this?
So the university, the class itself, they have a budget of $1,500. The art department is so excited that they have this opportunity to do something out in the community that they're putting in $1,000. So that's $2,500. Trees for Missoula has agreed to match that. So we have $5,000. We are hoping that the students will work to find sources for the other materials. But whatever goes over, Trees for Missoula will cover all the costs.
Hey, Karen.
Hey guys, this is John.
I'm John.
Hi, John.
Sorry I was detained with a little construction project problem over here. Karen, a quick question for you. There is a kids-made little skateboarding element right over there between Bob Ward's and the trail. I've seen a little bit of vandalism over on that section of trail, mostly along the fences that kind of separate some of the housing from the trail. Do you guys have any concerns about vandalism of this structure or plans to try to minimize that?
You know, I know David's concerned about that. Actually, the second class we had, we met on site with all the architects and engineers from Shade Shelter 1 and discussed all the pros and cons of the design and engineering. Then we met on site with David, and he gave all of his tips and comments and suggestions, and he did talk about vandalism. You know, when we had put in Shade Shelter 2, it's 2 blocks away from Willard High School, we had a lot of people who were very concerned about vandalism to that. I think the bench seat was tagged at least once, but other than that, it really has not been an issue at that site. This is over the hill. It is in view of homes. We've got some really nice new townhomes there and some other homes in the area. The students are aware of it. So are Chris Haskell and Maria. And so part of the engineering is to make sure that the surfaces aren't completely flat, that there are openings here and there so it doesn't make this beautiful flat surface for them to work on. The outside edge of this will be a live edge, so it will be an uneven surface on the outside of each of these arches. So doing what we can. The students the other day were talking about, we've added on the west side onto a couple of arches. We've extended arches a little bit to have some walls to create more shade, even more shade. And students were talking about perhaps muraling that, which we all know that muraling on any surface really is a great deterrent for tagging. So we are very mindful of that, John. The most people I have seen when I've been in this location are dog walkers, and have had actually a dog walker stop and talk to Trey Hill and me about the project and seemed very excited about it. So hopefully it'll just become something that's more adopted for the neighborhood.
I think it has a ton of potential. I use this trail quite a bit, and this section is it feels sort of like you're in a desert. You know, it's super dry over there. There's not much between the trail and Bob Ward's, and it's kind of gross. I know that there been talk about some possible development projects right there in that triangle between Bob Ward's and the trail. So that's pretty exciting. And I think anything that we could do to sort of improve that stretch of trail would be welcomed by the neighborhood and trail users. So yeah, I just, my only question was about the vandalism part. And I think you've addressed that to the best that any of us could.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for asking.
Is there a map in the packet that shows the exact location? I guess I'm curious.
Yeah, I believe I put a Google Earth with a red square around it. So David's at the north end of this area off of Agnes. And actually one of the students lives right there in those townhomes. So this is the very northern end of it. They do have the area between Agnes and Harvey. To the south of it, the next block. And what we're going to do is just really look at what's going to be the most even area for us to be able to get in. So we aren't doing a whole bunch of earth work and earth moving to make sure that it's a safe path off of the trail and through it. You know, we don't want to go down a big dip, but really some nice even spaces there. We have a good option.
Okay, that's good to hear. Because I think what John said about a desert feel, a lot of that is probably land that we can't work with because it's tied up with the railroad. And right. So to make sure that trail users know that this is a public space, not something in someone's backyard or just a neighborhood, you know, to make sure it's accessible to the trail users that they feel
right.
like.
You know, Donna had mentioned on Shade Shelter 2, and you know, it's on my list, but my list keeps getting longer. We've been talking about a interpretive sign at one of the shade shelters, and we were talking about it for Shade Shelter 2. I'd received a DNRC grant. That was not part of the grant, but we did talk about having an interpretive sign, and maybe one of these or more than one of these, we can have a little information piece about the Shade Shelter program.
I think that makes a huge difference. I know I missed the conservation lands discussion, but at our last meeting, we talked about how the signs at the trailhead and some interpretive stuff has just been helping with trail braiding and helping people be better users. And so I think interpretive signs would also help with just some of the how this fits into the overall scheme of the trail and of Missoula's park system.
I agree. And I love the fact that we could even highlight each partnership that we have going on for each of these shade shelters, and really excited. Trey Hill and I are hoping that if this works and if it goes smoothly, he would love to do a public sculpture class and continue this if it works out for everybody.
Cool. That'd be great, Karen. Any other questions for Karen or David?
I was just curious, I'm not sure how big that space is over there, but I grew up in that neighborhood or close to it. We used to have a lot of places where we used to be able to ride bikes and had dirt piles to ride on and everything. And I'm like wondering, is there potentially a spot right there we could put in a small bike park or just some dirt hills and stuff for kids to ride their bikes on, similar to what we've got over there at Bellevue?
Oh, Steve, that's a good question here. In general, we have a fairly narrow ownership down in this area. I believe this is fee ownership, but then you have the MRL tracks right next to you, and we have a license for the trail in a lot of sections, but we don't have the room here. So that is a possibility in future.
I think, yeah, isn't all the land that's sort of east of there in that triangle all the way down, isn't that all private?
I think I can
here,
ask
yes.
a little bit.
Yes, over in here behind Bob Ward's and like once you get off the rail tracks, that's all private. And
Yeah, but Steve, you have a good point there. And if they do proceed with some development plans for there, maybe that's a nice suggestion to include in the public space use.
Do a pump track down there.
One of the things I feel really cool about this is the individual seats. It seems so COVID compliant if they're 6 feet apart.
Any other questions for David or Karen? Are we ready for a motion?
Yes, please.
Ross, did you have a question?
No, I'm excited for a motion. I gotta sign off the meeting at 1 o'clock, so I was hoping to get to the voting part. I'll make the motion. I approve the shade shelter. I move that this park board approve the shade shelter design to be constructed and installed by Sculpture 2 public sculpture class in coordination with Trees for Missoula and Missoula Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Russ. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other further discussion? Any comments from the public?
We do have a member of the public in the waiting room. So I'm not sure.
Does that person have any comments regarding this motion?
Not seeing any hand raised.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, David.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
That's it for the action items.
All 5-acre chunk right at the top.
Have a good day, Ross.
Thanks. See you, everybody.
Can we do the day in the life next 3.2? That's Steve.
Sure.
Steve, I have to leave at 1:20, so I'm not sure how long your presentation is.
Okay.
John O'Connor's going to take over. And if we could all turn our video on, that'd be great.
Okay. Well,
You're up, Steve.
I'm going to share my screen here. See if this works.
There you go. Nice job, Steve.
Okay.
That's the weather we're having right now.
Okay, I'm Steve Pulley. I'm the District 1 maintenance technician for Developed Parks and Trails. I started in the spring of 2016. I've lived in Missoula all my life and definitely have a passion for our green space and working in it and serving the public by keeping it nice. So this is a pretty cool opportunity for me. District 1 demographics. We are all parks east of Brooks and Stevens from Jacobs Island to Skyview Park. We have over 150 acres maintained, including 25 parks, 10 median areas, 1.5 miles of riverbank, and 3 major trails. We have roughly 90 trash receptacles, 40 mutt mitt dispensers, 5 restroom facilities, 12 playgrounds, 3 splash decks, not including splash itself. We have, in our sports fields, we have 1 football field, 13 tennis courts, 6 volleyball nets, 3 soccer fields, 14 baseball, softball fields, 12 basketball courts. To maintain all of that, our staff is 1 maintenance technician, which is me, a maintenance tech assistant, 4 maintenance workers, and 2 to 3 park attendants. This is Tony Gordon. He's my maintenance tech assistant. Park maintenance begins with its employees. Every day begins with bringing staff together, putting the wheels in motions to go out and do what we do. Every parks employee has a sense of value in what they do, which is what drives them to come to work and go home happy to do their job. Having fun is what it's all about, and we work in a place where people recreate and enjoy being in an atmosphere of fun. Our mission: park maintenance employees are an essential force in keeping Missoula's parks safe, functional, and clean place in the community for the public. Safe is always our #1 priority. Through inspections and regular maintenance, we do our best to make sure Missoula has a safe place to play and relax. When we get a call about a safety issue, we usually have to drop what we're doing and go address the problem. Functional, keeping things working is what it's all about. Whenever something breaks or stops working properly, it's the role of maintenance staff to get things back up and running as quickly as possible. If we can't do it, we have to call someone and ask who can. This is our second priority. Clean. A tidy park is bad grammar. A tidy park feels safer and promotes wellness. Outside of our sanitary responsibilities, which are also a safety issue, cleanliness is our third priority. We are janitors of the parks, and have them clean and tidy creates an atmosphere for the citizens. Safety for the public. Safety concerns come up frequently throughout the year and usually disrupt whatever task any maintenance workers are doing when they are discovered or reported. Exterminating a hornet's nest near a play area, removing ice and snow, checking and replacing broken, loose playground features, cleaning up homeless camps. These are just a few examples of what it takes, or what kinds of things come up that pull us away from our normal scheduled work. Each safety issue is usually an emergency. The homeless camp in this picture on the right had opioid pills, used hypodermic needles, and fecal matter. This is a common situation, and it's increasing that we have to deal with downtown and along the riverbanks. And it seems like it's rapidly growing throughout Missoula. Park staff are trained to dispose of the biohazards, are encouraged to get hepatitis vaccinations. Safety for our staff. Park maintenance workers are constantly faced with their own safety risks in the workplace. We have PPE, which is required personal protective equipment, power tools and equipment, machinery, heavy equipment, hazardous chemicals, and biohazards are all things that we need PPE for. We deal with biohazards regularly with homeless camps, restrooms, and human waste, and trash receptacles and eating areas. We have special training required, such as pesticide licensing, right-of-way flagger training, hostile confrontation training, and then we have regular annual refresher trainings for various safety concerns in the parks. Functionality. Park maintenance staff perform the bulk of all maintenance and repairs that are needed to park property and infrastructure, such as irrigation, landscaping, playgrounds, grounds and sports turf, arboriculture, fencing, lighting, electrical, carpentry, plumbing, mechanical, and tools and equipment. Infrastructure repairs are our biggest item when it comes to functionality. Most of our systems have been in use for close to 50 years, some longer. This was a memorial at the tennis courts that got damaged, and it finally got old and the plumbing started to leak. And so I guess we're going to be replacing that here soon. Irrigation repairs. Sports turf requires intensive maintenance to keep the grass green and safe for our users. Irrigation repair is one of their biggest challenges throughout the summer, especially when it's hot. Mainline breaks and sports turf irrigation are top priority, and after safety are always treated as an emergency. Repairs like this one take about 2 days to complete. These were breaks that occurred at the same time at Playfair Park on a main line, which irrigates 80% of the park. So if we lose that main line in a hot summer, if it doesn't get repaired right away, the whole park goes brown. Wind damage is another major factor throughout every season of the year. Occasional hurricane force winds create a huge workload for staff and is yet another emergency. During the last windstorm, we were looking at working on a gate at Jacobs Island and decided to get a safe place. When the wind got violent, we were dispatched to go check some down trees by Lester Park. And then on the way, there was a tree across Higgins Avenue. We ended up being traffic control until the police arrived. From there, we went to Lester Park, where we guarded a live power line at an intersection until the power company could arrive. And that was almost 3 hours. When things get real, we all work in the best interest of the public safety. Snow. Another emergency we deal with is the snow. When it comes, we assume another role and get to work making our trails and sidewalks safe for people walking and riding their bikes. and we do our very best with the limited resources and unpredictable weather. Events, sporting events like facility rentals, holidays, memorials, political events, and random gatherings all represent work that often come up without much prior notice. Vandalism seems to creep up in our parks no matter where you go. There's rarely anyone to be held accountable, and the cost can be expensive to repair. Graffiti is an ongoing problem and addressed as soon as possible, weather permitting. If it contains profanity or otherwise offensive, it becomes our top priority and we have it removed or painted over. Outside of emergencies, there are some really cool things we get to do that falls outside of everyday routines. Making improvements to our parks is one of those biggest morale boosters. Going home after doing hands-on with an improvement project gives us a sense of ownership and accomplishment and pride in our parks and is very uplifting. Some of our accomplishments. On the left, the Southside Lions Park, the lights for the flagpole, they were designed, fabricated, and installed by District 1 staff with the help of the tie over at Vehicle Maintenance to weld them. Sacagawea Park, in our 2016, our tot structure was leveled by a drunk driver. The driver paid restitution for the cost of the feature and the contractor's fees. We utilized those funds to purchase a better feature and install it ourselves. For my assistant and I, that was one of the most rewarding accomplishments for either of us in our lives. Having these opportunities is extremely important to giving us a sense of belonging to our community. That was a really fun project. The Rose Park shed, last year we leveled that and finally got to replace it with a new one. That was a really cool deal we've been wanting to do for quite a while, and that shed looks so much better. The dugouts at Playfair, we're reconstructing a little bit at a time. We've had some wind damage that's torn the roofs off of some of those dugouts. Some of them are just getting rotten. Rose Park Rosebed border replacement. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of that. We had a volunteer event. I didn't really get much pictures for the volunteers, but we got a good start on replacing all those wooden borders. Memorial bench construction. These are always fun. This one was at Playfair Park over there by Russell School. The Rose Park volunteer event for the playground. I'm sure you're probably all aware of that. That was a really cool thing to go do on a weekend and volunteer for that. We did the Whitaker Nature Play last fall. That was our last week for a lot of staff. They were on layoff after that week, and so it was a really nice way to tie up the end of the year and send everybody home, feeling good about what they do. My job as a maintenance tech, what I like about my job, great pay and benefits, of course, job security, feeling important, which is people love what we do and tell us about it. It's a direct sense of accomplishment, public safety, and community service, solving problems, fixing things that need to be fixed, working outside, helping people, helping citizens, and helping coworkers. Some improvements I would love to see for us in the Parks Department is an increased maintenance budget, more staff, more money for infrastructure repairs, more money for new equipment, more money for snow removal. We need more staff. Our labor staff is really tight. We could use 2 maintenance tech assistants where we have 1 and another maintenance worker, 5 instead of 4. A bigger facility. We're at a tiny facility to operate out of, and it's just really cramped. It's pretty outdated and there's no space for growth. And so it's really hard for us to be efficient working from where we are. And organic solutions to our green space needs, which is something that's new that's coming up and I'm really excited about. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Great presentation. Hey, Donna, do you have any comments?
Thank you. Yeah, I just, Steve has been, he's such a wonderful maintenance tech for us to have. He has over and over demonstrated for the citizens in his district and their department, you can probably see his passion and his compassion. And it really makes a difference in the system and for all of us. And so just big hats off to Steve. I think he represents our team very, very well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. John, would you take over, please? I've got to go to a doctor's appointment.
I will. Thank you, Dale. Hey, Steve, great presentation. Thanks. I had a comment and a question, if you don't mind. First, the comment. My house butts up against Whitaker Park, so that nature feature that you guys put in, I can't tell you how much that is used. It's remarkable that, I mean, it's almost like what you hear about kids when they get toys and then you give them wooden blocks and they use the wooden blocks more. We've got a really nice, it's a small playground up there, but it's really nice. But the minute you put in those pieces of the tree and people could climb on them and sit on them and play around them, that's where I see most of the activity. And it's wonderful to put that in there. So thank you very much for that as a Whitaker Park person. My question more is a district-wide question. When you think about the properties that you manage there, is there one open space or park space in particular that you feel is the most worrisome or needs the most attention in terms of updating or just problems that you're presented with?
I would have to say probably Southside Lions Park. The irrigation there is just completely shot. It's old poly pipe and it splits. It's like if you're not working on it, there's a break somewhere. You have to wait for it to surface. But we've opened up spots where it was leaking and found like 15 repairs in a row on that line over there. And I know we're losing a lot of money on water, but it's really difficult to keep that space green. I know it's expensive, and it really ties up a lot of our time and our resources trying to maintain that green spot. And it's really centralized. I mean, it's right in the middle of everything. It's got Washington School right next to it. So I think that one is one that I found, getting the irrigation system replaced there is probably on the top of my list for priorities.
And Donna, is that the one where somebody broke glass in the splash deck a couple years back and we had to shut that down?
I do believe that was one of the sites. The worst place we had glass broke was actually in the Lazy River at Splash, because then you have to drain all the water and shut it down.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Steve. Great to know.
Thank you.
I got one too.
I have a question also, but you go first.
Okay. Steve, I am curious what projects this spring you are most excited about, and do you have any good volunteer opportunities coming up that you want to pitch?
Geez, I don't have much for you as far as any volunteer opportunities. I just haven't gotten that far. This spring, I think our top priority is we have one more dugout to replace that's rotten over at Playfair. And it's not a huge project, but we're just trying to fit it in right now with wherever we can before things really get going this spring. We do have the wood ordered. We've got the metal for it. We just need to paint it and get it put up. But right now I don't have any big projects planned.
So that was a great presentation. Thank you. And a couple things I'm glad you highlighted the safety issues, because I don't think we all recognize that. And there's really a lot of it that you deal with. And I had a question about the homeless problem. You said that it's growing, the problem is growing. And so I'm curious about your perspective. Like, it seems like we're getting more homeless shelters. It seems like we're getting more support from the administration on helping homeless people. So can you just describe more like what you're seeing? Is it more people? Is it more serious problems? I mean, that picture was really telling.
That was just a tiny drop in the bucket. The camps get way bigger. What I think what really the problem is there, it's obviously it's growing. Since I started here, I just about didn't have anything in District 1 at all for homelessness. We had, and then we incorporated the river, like we adopted the next year, 2017, we got Tool Park and the Milwaukee Trail. And I started to see more of it, but now I'm seeing like at Rose Park, Bonner Park, Playfair Park, they're all really getting to be a lot, especially at Playfair Park. And there's just no room. The problem is the homeless people have run out of spaces to be alone. And so they're spreading out further and further into the park. And I really feel like as a community, we need to stop creating situations that allow for homelessness. I really have a strong belief that we need a mental health care facility. You know, it's most of the people that are homeless have some sort of mental health problem that's preventing them from being successful. And it's just you don't know what to do. I mean, I honestly, I don't have a good answer, but I can tell you that we don't have the mental health care that we need, like probably as a country, but it seems to be a big problem here. And I know we just don't have the facilities for it. It would be really cool if we could get a mental health care center, a veteran center, or someplace for people to get help, you know, mentally, besides just giving them a handout, giving them a hand up instead.
Thank
Steve.
you.
One
Yeah.
of the things the park board might advantage from is we do have facilities that are going in for additional housing, including folks who currently have to be turned away from the Poverello, not only because of space, but because of they're not dry. And so, and then I do think that part of the spreading out of our homeless population has had some results of the pandemic. All people want to be further away from other people and not live in close proximity. But one thing that we may want to do for our board is see if we can get somebody from Reaching Home and Missoula Promise to do a brief presentation to this group. Missoula Promise is a new response team that's made up of mental health experts from Partnership Health Center and Missoula Fire Department. So depending on what the call is, we're not sending a big fire truck and a police officer. Instead, we're sending a mental health professional and medical services, which is, I think, is so cool. But we'll see what we can do to kind of get
great
presented to this group. And then with Stephen here, and I think I saw Lincoln on the line earlier, it just reminds me, we need to do that for our entire staff, because there's actually been a lot of work in the past year around this issue, and good for all of us to get a reminder.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, both of you.
Steve, this is Sonia Verlanik. I don't have a camera, so great presentation. And I do want to kind of follow up on what Wendy said too about the safety. And this was a few years ago. I actually, when all the bathrooms were still left open, my son actually spent the summer working for the Parks Department and ended up with Giardia. And the only place that it could be traced back to was the Kiwanis Park bathrooms.
Okay, thanks, Sonia.
Yeah, so just be really careful.
Yeah, our water sources are definitely something that we need to keep clean.
Well, and this was more the bathroom. This was in the days when his job was to go around and hose out all of the bathrooms because the homeless were living in them and using them more than they could be used. And then we started, shutting the bathrooms at night. But it's pretty scary. It's pretty easy to get stuff that you don't think you're going to get.
I want to reassure Park Board, every year I think we get a lot better. Stephen mentioned that we do go through the Heb shot. We spend an immense amount of time, instead of thinking about what to do if it happens, if somebody gets sick, we spend the bulk of our time on prevention. And so our PPE is constantly upgraded. We continue to do training. I do want to get you real stats on unsheltered individuals living in the parks versus in shelters. This is a much bigger issue, and I just want to be really thoughtful about how we talk about this issue, because the last thing I want to do is minimize any of the human beings living in our community. And I don't think anybody's trying to do that, but I want to great caution how we think about that, and how, as Stephen said, we look at this from an equity approach and give everybody equal opportunity as opposed to everybody a fair shake. And we will continue to do that and provide that training, and continue to do everything we can to keep all of our employees safe. They are superstars. I think it is often surprising what a variety of things we ask our employees to do to continue to maintain and improve the quality of life for all Missoulians, whether they're visiting our parks or temporarily, often for no particular reason of their own, living in them from time to time.
Donna, I forget, what is the name of the park across from Conlon's on North? It's an older facility.
Boyd or McLeod?
McLeod.
McLeod. Have you had any changes in that park being used differently with the sort of the shelter that was opened near there? Have you seen any changes in that park use?
That's not one of my parks, but I can tell you, my parents live right kitty corner from there. I actually grew up at that park, and I haven't really seen any homelessness there, but there's no shelter there for them.
Right.
I, in my travels back and forth, really haven't seen anything going on there.
John, I was going to say the same thing. I drive by that park to take my kid to school every morning, and I don't see the issues or any of the challenges there. And even just the shelter over on Johnson and North, since they changed their doorway and created an outdoor space for them, I've seen anecdotally from what I've seen a lot of improvement with the appearance and the cleanliness and everything going on over there. So I think they've changed a lot. I think they've created an outdoor space for people to hang out, and they're not hanging out in the bus stop or the shelter at MRL Park either.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Okay, do we have any other questions for Steve or comments? Do we have anyone in the public that wishes to comment? Okay, hearing none. Donna, would you be opposed to letting Neil go ahead?
I think Neil should go ahead.
He's been very patient. So Neil, why don't you take it from there?
I'm going to have a hard time following Steve. He did a great job. So Steve, thank you. So I'm Neil Miner. I'm the Parks and Trails Design Development Manager. I have the fun job of doing a lot of the stuff sending it over to Steve to maintain. And so I think as I go through some of this, I love Steve's one of the people I really like to work with. And when we get down to one projects like the Bellevue Park Master Plan and everything, he's the one that maintains that. And I really appreciate all his work. First of all, I think Nathan's still on the line too, listening in, but I would like to send out a congratulations to Nathan. He was just nominated the Downtown Employee of the Year Award for the Missoula Downtown Association. So that was, he's done a lot of work through the North Riverfront Parks and Trails Master Plan, which is Caris, East Caris, Best Reed, Kiwanis, and Downtown Lions, and I'll get to some of those later in my presentation, but he kind of led that whole process over the last year and a half, and did a lot of great work. And they said it was a very easy decision on them to nominate or to select him as the Employee of the Year. So there's a little video on the MDA's Facebook page or their website if you want to go kind of see some of the items. A couple of the current projects. Second of all, I'd like to thank Cassie for starting this PowerPoint for me. I've kind of told her that I was bogged down with everything going on, and she gave me a head start, and it definitely helped. So I'd like to give a shout out to Cassie too. So some of the current projects, I'm going to go into a few photos. West Side Park Phase 1, Waterworks Hill Trailhead, Karis Park implementation, which is that North Riverfront Parks and Trails master plan, and then the Clark Fork River Restoration and Access Plan, and the FMRP, which is the Fort Missoula Regional Park Sites certification. So I'll kind of get into that a little more. Some of my ongoing tasks right now, in addition to those current projects, are to maintaining the pace of the development reviews and questions coming in from the development community and all the different projects. We have a lot going on right now with subdivisions and just over in the Mullen area, which is now the Swatip Kane master plan neighborhood area. Linda Vista, we have so much development going on with our housing need, and just meeting those demands has been really challenging. And then as part of that, just continuing to advocate for the parks, trails, open space, and active transportation connections in all those reviews. The West Side Park Phase 1, we did a big master plan more than a year ago for the whole playground. That's one of the wood structures similar to Dragon's Hollow that's kind of reaching the end of its lifespan. This Phase 1 is the 2 to 5 year old playground near the splash pad. Nathan did a lot of the design work on here, and he has where a lot of this playground's getting installed this spring. This is the park that just got the infrastructure that was just completed. We added a portalet enclosure. So we come in and put a portalet in here. We see a lot of benefits to cleanliness. I think Donna was kind of mentioning some of how we can streamline some of our efficiencies and maintenance. In one of those is to add these portalets instead of an actual bathroom building. That's a lot lower costs, and the maintenance is a lot easier. In this one, we had to have a hand washing station because it's next to a splash pad. We had to go through the whole state process and getting exemptions because they wanted us to have the same restroom facilities as a pool for a splash pad. So we kind of went through a variance process just to get a portalet enclosure and a hand washing station. In the background over here, you see the new shade shelter, and it's just shade. It's not a rain shelter. We see a lot of need for this park for reservations for the splash pad for birthdays and whatnot. Picture on the right is the contractors installing the playground curb. So the curbing that goes around the playground and to contain all the wood chips. So as soon as this just happened a month or so ago, and again, Nathan's the lead on this project. In the spring, when the ground thaws, we'll go in there and install the playground equipment. We already have that under contract, and all the playground equipment's here. So that's an exciting project. The Waterworks Hill Trailhead, this is highly anticipated. It's been on my work plan since I started 7 years ago. I've done a few iterations of it, and it's finally, with the pass of the 2018 bond and everything, we're finally moving forward. I have a contractor, not a contractor yet. I have an engineer under contract to do the final design, and that is for the design of Minkler Road, or what is called Minkler Loop Road. We may change the name at some future point in the city. Coming around, and then the trailhead will be off of the road. I don't know if anyone's been up there, but this road gets stacked up with people. There could easily be 30 to 50 cars on there during the high use time. It's our highest use trailhead in the city, especially during these shoulder seasons when Jumbo is closed. And then in addition to that, this is on the right side, there's a kind of what the trailhead will look like. And there will be a 1/2 mile universal accessible trail. So it's a little different than ADA. It's not, ADA is kind of built environment. This is kind of more of the natural accessibility guidelines, but with the there will be a pretty nice gradual slope up, which is this slope to a great overlook at the city. Very rarely on the accessible trail do you get a good overlook or overview. We'll have some working with some partners on like a memorial bench and a memorial location up here, and then kind of going around the Peace Park is over to the left. And then as part of this trailhead, we'll probably reroute the steep start of the trail kind of through the Missoula Water property and hop back on. This is all kind of come apart or come through for as a result of the Missoula Water acquisition with the city. Another big project. This is Nathan's, the downtown park, the North Riverfront Parks and Trails Master Plan. This is East Caras. The stormwater utility is doing an infiltration gallery under the mound. So previously, all the stormwater from the downtown used to just discharge right into the river somewhere around right here. A couple of years ago, they installed a hydrodynamic separator, which is the solids. It takes out all the bottles, cigarette butts, sand out of the stormwater before putting in the river, and the infiltration gallery will take out the first flush of the storm. So all the dirtiest sediment that goes out, the oils and everything will go get infiltrated into the infiltration gallery before just dumping into the river. That's going to go under the big mound area in the park, which is this area on the left. So as part of that, and as a result of the construction on Higgins and COVID slowing things down with events in the park, we're kind of being opportunistic and getting the design of what we're going to call phase 1 of this Caras Park designed, so we could potentially go out to bid this spring to get these improvements. And that would be the mound area, which would now be a multi-use turf area. This revised amphitheater, right now you see the grass on the inside that never really survived. It just gets trampled. That will be hardscape, and then we'll convert the existing amphitheater into more of a grass seating amphitheater and create some better sight lines and visibility through here, and then increase the width of the trail on the river. Another one that Nathan's kind of taken lead on is the Clark Fork River Restoration and Access Project. This is another one as a result of the bond project, but it will go from essentially Ben Hughes Park to Riverside Park. So East Missoula to about Russell Street. This shows just Madison to California, but we've kind of enhanced the breadth of the study. We're looking at the restoration of the riverfront. A lot of it's been done to conceptual level on the south bank, and then we're going to look at some of the north bank. And we're working with Morgan's crews and some of the other crews to see what those look like. And these are mainly just creating a hardened river access in points that are highly eroded, and then that will enable us to kind of revegetate and keep some of the more vegetation on the other parts. So kind of focus the use where it's needed, as opposed to just let everyone kind of have these user-made trails down to the river. And feel free to stop me at any time if there's any questions.
Hey, Neil, I have a question.
Yep.
John, on where you're widening the trail by Caras, are there plans to widen the trail in other locations as well, or will it narrow back down?
The plan is to widen all the trail, like as part of the downtown master plan, and just the need just because of the use in some of these downtown trails. A 10-foot wide trail is the minimum trail width. The area through here, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to walk through there during an event when people are watching the wave. 10 feet or 9 feet in that area is not enough. And so I think in the downtown master plan, we're looking at widening it through from right where Taco John's is all the way through Kiwanis, mainly through the downtown area. On the north, on the Ron's River Trail side, and then on the south side, right by Madison Street Bridge, underbridge, we have a trail counter. We see about 2,000 to 3,000 users per day on that trail. And so widening it there as well. And that will be part of this overall Clark Fork River restoration project. In some areas, we're going to try to back the trail off of the river to give us a little more room to create that vegetative area instead of just old railroad grade that now has a trail on it to river. You know, it's not the most naturalized channel in there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Neil, along those lines, is there any discussion of putting in some kind of designated bike lane on those routes just to try to minimize conflict between pedestrians and bikes?
We've looked at it. We haven't come up with a actual full recommendation. There's kind of mixed messaging out there by the national standards about, or guidelines about when to do that. And so we haven't looked at when to do that yet. I think we kind of looked at it as part of the downtown master plan, but not a formal recommendation of what to do yet. When we do widen this trail, we'll probably look and see what the best practices are at the time and kind of look at it that way.
Thanks.
Another project we're working on, I was able to hire a temporary employee right around Thanksgiving. He's been working when we did the Fort Missoula Regional Park planning process, the design. Our goal was always to get a sites certification. So it's kind of like the lead certification for buildings, but it's for kind of land development projects. So he's been working on this for the last month and a half or two. And kind of going, we had a few false starts, but it takes a comprehensive amount of time to actually kind of get through this process. And Garrick is working with me to, and the land group, who is the landscape architects on this project, to kind of finalize that submittal and get that in. Our goal is to get that in by June. This will be at the time we started the process, it was going to be the largest developed park project in the sites certification, the first one in Montana. I would have to talk to them again about where that is, but very rarely can you get, 100 and something acres of developed parkland into the site certification. So it's a great, they're really excited. The sites team is really excited for this project to kind of get finalized. I think right now we're kind of looking at this site's silver certification level. That will kind of come more clarity as we get further along in the process, but it should be a really cool award and certification to get on this project. Highlights and accomplishments over the last year. This is, we got the North Riverfront Parks and Trails master plan adoption. I'm just going to kind of go through these slides because I have some photos, and photos are always better than words. So this is that North Riverside Parks and Trails plan that Nathan worked on. Again, this is Karis, East Karis, Bess Reed, and then Kiwanis is right off the map on this side, and downtown Lyons is on the other side down by where Western Cider is on the California Street Bridge. Another cool project that's kind of coming is possibly a redesign of downtown Lyons Park with a few partners to widen the trail through this section as well and put lights on the trail. This is another trail that is really dark at night. It's a highly used access from the west side to the trail system. They cross up the users cross up Burton Street, which is right up through, like right off the edge here, come on the trail and cross the California Street Bridge. So it would be really neat to activate this space a little more and create some desirable uses there. So we're really excited about that project too. We adopted the Red Fern Master Plan. This is out in Canyon Creek, out by the airport. Came in over to us. It's a county park, and came over with that airport annexation we just got. So we did a master plan with the community on adopting that. I think some of you all are familiar with that plan and adopted that process or adopted that plan. Fort Missoula, we had a donor recognition tree instead of having a placard on each bench and tree and rock that we had out at the fort. We were trying to do a donor recognition. We hired a metal fabricator to do this tree. You can see all the little holes in here. We have leaves that he's creating. And so we'll have leaves with the donors' names, and we have a color system based on what they've donated. So we'll put those on here, and then we're looking at creating a map or an app to show people where their actual tree is. What we've had problems with in our system in the past is just many different monuments that go as a donor tree throughout the system, and some would look like gravestones and some look like a metal sign nailed to a tree. And so we're trying to eliminate and create some continuity in that. So this is on the backside of our headquarters building, or not it's on the parking lot side, and right by the pickleball courts at Fort Missoula. This was another one long time coming. The Bellevue Bike Park restoration. This is another one like Steve Poley mentioned. This is one where we had our staff go out there. The contractor kind of got us behind the 8 ball on the revegetation of this park we kind of left him an ultimatum of finishing some of it in June before it opened in July. And once, he was highly compacted, we didn't get any vegetation regrowth in there. We just had zero opportunity to actually get ahead of the game. So we went in last fall to kind of enhance where people should be riding, and kind of designated where the areas that we wanted the vegetation to come in. This was, something we wanted to get done, and it's just getting the staff out there, and the staff was really excited to do it. So should be there's a little more to do with some signage and everything, and grow in and more planting and irrigation work, but definitely an improvement. And again, I had to throw in my second shout out to Nathan, because without Nathan and me and a lot of the development stuff, a lot of this other stuff like Bellevue and this stuff, these smaller things fall through the cracks. So
Thanks a lot.
My presentation for now, if there's any other questions.
Great presentation as always.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Neil?
Yeah, I got one. Go. Okay. So as a member of Open Space Advisory Committee, a couple years ago, year and a half ago or so, we approved the purchase of an easement. I think it was 1505 East Broadway. Does that sound right?
Yep. Yeah.
Just kind of curious I know there was long-term plans to put together some kind of a riverside trail along that corridor. I'm just curious how that's coming along.
Yeah, I actually got a call. We created that easement for the trail. And I got a call from one of the architects that's looking at developing that for the person that sold or bought the rest of the parcel. If you remember, we bought the whole parcel and then split off the easement, and then sold the remaining parcel to the adjacent property owner.
Right.
And so I'm actually hiring an engineer right now to do that preliminary trail design, and we'll look at doing a development agreement with the people developing that lot as they're in there doing the construction to grade that trail connection through there. So that is an ongoing project too.
Cool.
And it is 1505 East Broadway, so you had to really
okay.
Hey, Neil, this is Wendy. I had a question way back on Waterworks, and I asked this, I've asked a couple times when we've had that presentation before, but when I looked at the parking area, I'm someone who goes up there like 5 times a week. I'm really concerned there's not enough parking spaces. If that diagram is accurate, what is there, 30?
Yeah, 31. I think we're increasing it to by about 10 or 11 right now.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure there's a carrying capacity on that hill, but it just would be such a bummer to have that done and then have people still parking because they have to. And I just don't see that going down, the use. People are just more and more. I think people this year got up there that had never been there before. So
I have that same concern when we went and did our walkthrough like our kickoff meeting with the engineers, that counted 15 parking spaces or 15 cars parked there. And it was a Thursday afternoon in the snow. And so it was like, yeah, I have the same concern. This is the parking right now. We're going to kind of increase it a little. And then we're going to look as part of the design. You can see this blue area is an expansion. And so we'll have about 40 spaces. Anytime you do an expansion, it just adds incremental costs just because you have another drive aisle and everything. So I think we're going to try to do the first one with the money we have now. And if the need is there in the future, I think we'll have ability to create some more spaces.
Yeah, that
That
sounds
is
great.
one of my concerns as well. I think I told Donna last week the same thing when I check in with her through the wall over here. Not through
Yeah.
there
I
is actually a
actually-
wall behind me, but
I actually broke my elbow on the way people park now on the side where there's that giant dip. And so I always think about liability. So anyway, thank you for that. That's great.
yeah. There will be the road will be improved, so no giant dip anymore. There will be curb and gutter on each side and a sidewalk going up. And so there will be better drainage. You won't have like the alluvial fan at the bottom where all the storm water rushes all the ground, like the dirt off the hill down on to the road. Yep. There will be a little stacking distance. The road will kind of tee in a little more. And so safety for both hikers, walkers, runners, users, and then as far as on automobiles as well. So
that sounds great. When is that going to be? When will it be completed?
We're
I don't know if
gonna
you mentioned that.
Design will probably go through June. We'll try to bid it for construction this late summer, fall.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks.
So we'll probably have to look at some kind of alternate bypass or something. Like Donna and I were talking about potentially having people park in that lot down here where people park for Grizz games or something, and creating there's a few trails to get up around. And because this is, a lot of people a day use this trail. And so I don't know if we're going to be able to keep them off for however long construction is going to take. So
yeah, good luck.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. I can't agree with Wendy more on that. I mean, and when you add in the fact you're going to put an accessible loop in there, I think it's just going to bring in even more people. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was a need for a lower parking lot at some point, not in the too distant future. The North Hills and Waterworks Hill are just getting hammered. I mean, all of our trails are obviously, but I just see this area growing more and more in popularity.
Yeah, I think, and it looked like Donna may be working towards her saying something, but I think, yeah, that's what we want to grade this in a way that it will be easy for us to go in the future and do when we have all the equipment up there. And we talked about that, is that you'd come around, like create like a double loaded aisle. And we even talked about draining it into the middle with the green infrastructure, stormwater infiltration gallery, and the landscape architect on the project is really excited about pollinator and pollinator species and everything in there. So I think it should be a fun project.
What I was going to add is we do need to find some sort of balance, because obviously we don't want mall parking lots next to open space with things like phlox and bitterroots on them. We have to find some sort of equilibrium with carrying capacity, how we access trailheads, how many people at every trailhead. So it's more than just how many cars can we park. It's a very, very complex issue that we're diving into here, and largely our first big experiment. We have another parking lot at the Frolic Trail on I-90. My guess is, except for certain weekends, it's probably adequate, other than we can't seem to find a way to stop it from being used for park and ride.
Yeah, snowball park and ride. Yep.
So
I totally get that. And I'm a person who's be like, yeah, we got to protect it. But I've also kind of changed this year, and the people up there that I never saw before. There's one couple that goes up there every night this winter with a baby. And I've never seen them up there before. There's all kinds of families. And so I think you're right. You know, the loving it to death thing and the getting hammered thing, you know, Peter Lessica, I know about the double trail, but I also think this is what we're about, is like, let's get more people out. It's so good for them for so many reasons. And
Agree. It's
so,
definitely want them out there. I think what I'm trying to encourage is dispersed out there.
yep. Mm-hmm.
That there might be other ways to get to a
Yep.
trail besides driving your car.
Yeah, good point.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, seriously.
Lots of problems to solve, and for the most part, they're really darn good ones. We have, as you've heard from me on a monthly basis, we continue to see much greater than the average use in our system. I wish that through some sort of magic means, we could have had some sort of counters up in multiple locations throughout the system a year prior to the pandemic and then during the pandemic. And all we really have to go on is anecdotal from all of our employees and from what citizens are telling us. But it is not uncommon. I was on North Hills myself over the holidays, and honestly, it felt almost like doing the High Line in Glacier in July. So we know it's getting used.
And I will build on Donna's comment. We do have some eco counters throughout our trail system, our paved trail system. And last time I looked at those, it was a 50% increase almost across the board from pre-pandemic to after. And, you know, same time each year. And I looked at quite a bit, and it was pretty fascinating to look. So I think we do have some of those. It's not for our open space. I think our open space might even be a little more, but yeah.
Clancy's been doing a lot of research. So in the next several months, I'm sure we'll have some updates on conservation lands too.
Well, Neil, I can't believe you've been here for 7 years now. That blows me away. It seems like it was just yesterday. But I gotta say, I'm not trying to be too lovey-dovey, but the team of you and Nathan is just incredible. The amount of work that you guys produce and the quality is fantastic. I was one of those people barking about Bellevue, and I'm just so pleased the way that the Parks and Rec department responded to the concerns of folks about Bellevue and how beautiful that park is now. I also want to throw another shout out to Karen and what Trees for Missoula does, and just those projects, and beautification means so much to people, just the little things. So thanks for all the work that you're doing. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Do you have any other comments or questions for Neil?
I would like to thank Steve too, again, for like the Bellevue, the ongoing maintenance out there, because that's a lot of work out there. So thanks.
Do we have any public comments or questions? Well, Donna, our presentations took a little longer than expected. I don't know if you have 6 minutes that you want to give us on a director's report.
You know, you can read for yourself. I think they're pretty detailed. Since we haven't, Neil and Steve and Morgan covered a lot of our big current work projects. So you heard quite a bit. As far as we haven't touched on recreation and business team, we did wrap up our $960,000 Montana COVID relief childcare grant. It appears that we will have qualified for all $960,000. We were able to credit several families their cost of childcare going all the way back to late last spring. And so they do have those credits with us so they can continue to use childcare. We have extended the low cost rates to families that will hold until March 15th. Just to give you some real broad numbers, at a minimum, we have been spending in the red, going in the red at about $30,000 a month without the grant. In providing these critical services to families. Meg now has about 100 kids a day at Lowell School, every day after school, and every day there is no school. Every weekday there is no school. And, you know, a lot of the people that we're serving can only be at their jobs because we have these programs available for them. And so it's important not only to those families, but it's important to the businesses where these folks work. And it's obviously important to us as a community. So that continues to be one of our greatest sources of pride and also one of our greatest challenges. The interlocal agreement was approved for using Lowell School as a neighborhood center. And that was approved by MCPS Board of Trustees at the end of January. And it will be approved by City Council on February 22nd. We'll take it to Parks and Conservation tomorrow. So that's a pretty cool project. David is plowing ahead with the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. The LWCF was finally once again funded through multiple partners, and years of lobbying and efforts. Was signed into law in July of last year. And so there are 3 rounds this year, and we will be submitting for $450,000 request for a grant for the West Side Playground. The Resurrection Cemetery Association agreement went through, and so we have secured the North Side Ball Diamond Annex for another 50 to 90 years of park service. So those are some pretty significant and I think exciting equity projects where it relates to level of service. And then Grant continues to do, I think, really good work in open space. He's developing the criteria. He'll be bringing that to you next month. TJ and Lincoln hired a female maintenance technician, Nikki O'Brien, which is great. We lost Kate Sousa and have an excellent replacement for Kate and Mike Nonamaker, but it's kind of nice to have a great mix of men and women on our team because it helps us represent who we're serving and brings broad perspectives to all the work we do. We have a verbal acceptance of an offer for a conservation lands manager. We hope to have the individual on board by March. And so if it is a he, I think we ended up interviewing all males. It was excellent slate of candidates. We always seem to do best on our conservation outdoor rec side when we're recruiting. I guess people want to live here, so that's great to hear. And he will be joining us and hopefully meeting you in March. And then just up and coming, I am anticipating that there is going to be some relaxation of the COVID gathering numbers limitations. And so as a staff looking ahead, we are in yet another new position, if you will. So last year in March, we were figuring how to shut everything down. And there were so many unknowns around the pandemic. And if you remember, we didn't know if you touched a surface, if you couldn't touch it again for another 3 or more days and all kinds of crazy things. We know a lot more about it, but it's still obviously very scary, very challenging. We know that there's variants out there. Our fire department and all the partners are doing an excellent job getting the vaccines out as soon as the product comes in. That's been the hard part. We're not getting enough vaccines. So that's going good. So what we're doing is we're preparing for a summer in numbers that looks a lot like 2019, not 2020, but under all pandemic precautions. And so I think there's going to be a number of challenges for all of us and our team. One thing that I have continued to have great pride in is how successfully we've had a couple hundred employees get through the pandemic and keep services open when so many places were struggling. So when schools were not in session, which I completely understand, we were having daycare 50 hours a week. And our operations staff has continued to keep facilities open and clean and sanitized. And so we'll do that, but we're expecting numbers to move around a little bit. I do expect to see a ton of tourism. And I think as we open up a little bit, the folks will be coming to Missoula. We saw a lot of our sports teams leaving last year anyway, and especially during the school year. So it didn't make a ton of sense to be so restrictive and just have teams leaving. Why not have them come here? We continue to look at the Parks and Recreation team as a model for our community and how to behave and manage during the pandemic. And so that is what we'll be spending a lot of our time on this spring.
Thanks, Donna. The last couple of meetings, we've talked a lot about staffing shortages and problems. It sounds like you guys have had some success lately in addressing some of that. Is that still, staffing issues are still pretty prevalent?
They are. I think the big test will be this spring. If we're able to bring on all the intermittent employees we need to for park attendance and swimming pools and programs, and we still won't ramp up 100%, but it'll be a significant ramp up from last year. We'll see.
Thank you.
We still have hard to find positions like urban foresters.
Right.
Multiple times.
Does anybody have any questions for Donna before we end the meeting today? Please be sure you read her report, and if you have any follow-up questions, we can get those addressed. Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, we're about 2 minutes over, and so we're going to try to finish on time. It'd be great to get a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, second, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Donna. Thanks,
Donna.
Steve. Thanks,
everybody.
Lincoln. Thanks, everybody
Great
else.
program, Donna.